He's
Thank you.
resident Bohemian.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming in. I'm going to begin the way that you do, Adi, by asking everyone to say a sincere prayer. I would say that I am seeking the blessings of the senior devotees, but I consider all of you senior to me in your devotion and your sincerity. And so, as Adi has taught us so many times in Nico's class, please pray that the words that come out of my mouth will be pleasing to Krishna, will be in line with Guru and Sadhu and Shastra, and that I may, as Yashoda Dwal says, say something that is nourishing and understand it's not me, and that'll be Krishna's words and the teaching of the acharyas that I will try to just shine a light on this morning. So please, 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 please pray for me in that regard. Thank you. So I'd like to begin by taking us to Vrindavan. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavarava Girigaradari Gopi Janavarava Girigaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We'll go ahead and share the screen. And thank you, everybody. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the king of all books, 9th canto, 16th chapter, verses 10 through 19. There's a lot of verses here, most of which do not have any Sanskrit. So I will read the English until we get to the very end. Just makes this smaller so I can see better. There we go. Once, when Parashuram left the ashram for the forest with Vasuman and his other brothers, the sons of Kachavira Arjuna took the opportunity to approach Jagamagni's residence to seek vengeance for their grudge. Text 11. The sons of Kachavira Arjuna were determined to commit sinful deeds. Therefore, when they saw Jagamagni sitting by the side of the fire to perform yajna and meditating upon the supreme personality of Godhead, who is praised by the best of selected prayers, they took the opportunity to kill him. Text 12. With pitiful prayers, Renuka, the mother of Parashuram, and the wife of Jagamagni, begged for the life of her husband. But the sons of Kachavira Arjuna, being devoid of the qualities of Kshatriyas, were so cruel that despite her prayers, they forcibly cut off his head and took it away. Verse 13. Lamenting in grief for the death of her husband, the most chaste Renuka struck her own body with her hands and cried very loudly, "Oh Rama, my dear son Rama." Text 14. Although the sons of Jamuna, including Lord Parashuram, were a long distance from home. As soon as they heard Renuka loudly calling, "Oh, Rama, my son," they hastily returned to the ashram, where they saw their father already killed. Text 15. Virtually bewildered by grief, anger, indignation, affliction, and lamentation, the sons of Jamuna cried, "Oh, Father, most religious, saintly person, you've left us and gone to the heavenly planets." Text 16. Thus lamenting, Lord Parashuram entrusted his father's dead body to his brothers and personally took up his axe, having decided to put an end to all Kshatriyas on the surface of the world. Text 17. O King, Lord Parashuram then went to Mahismati, which was already doomed by the sinful killing of a Brahmana. In the midst of the city, he made a mountain of heads severed from the bodies of the sons of Kartavira Arjuna. In text 18 through 19, which I will do the Sanskrit. Taraktena nadim goram abramanya bhayavaham hetum kritva pratrivarpam chachle mangala karani trisapta kripta pritivim kritani kachleyam prabhu samanta panchake chakle shoni todan radanava. Translation and purport. By His Most Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada Jai. With the blood of the bodies of these sons, Lord Parashuram created a ghastly river, which brought great fear to the kings who had no respect for Brahminical culture. Because the Kshatriyas, the men of power and government, were performing sinful activities, Lord Parashuram, on the plea of retaliating for the murder of his father, rid all the Kshatriyas from the face of the earth 21 times. Indeed, in the place known as Samapatapachaka, he created 9 lakes filled with their blood. Parashuram is the supreme personality of Godhead, and his eternal mission is to protect the devotees and annihilate their miscreants. To kill all the sinful men is one among the tasks of the incarnation of Godhead. Lord Parashuram killed all Kshatriyas 21 times consecutively because they were disobedient to the Brahminical culture. That the Kshatriyas had killed his father was only a plea. The real fact is that because the Kshatriyas, the ruling class, had become polluted, their position was inauspicious. Brahminical culture is enjoined in the Sastra, especially in Bhagavad-Gita. Chakturvaryam maya shishtam guna karma vebhag sahaha. According to the laws of nature, whether at the time of Parashuram or at the present, if the government becomes irresponsible and sinful, not caring for Brahminical culture, there will certainly be an incarnation like Parashuram to create a devastation by fire, famine, pestilence, or some other calamity. Whenever the government disrespects the supremacy of the personality of Godhead and fails to protect the institution of Varnashram Dharma, it will certainly have to face such catastrophes as formerly brought about by Lord Parashuram. Om Ganti Muranga Jananjanan Shlakaya Chakshuritanina Tajmai Shri Gurude Namaha Vanchakopatu Vichak Kripasintu Vichapatita Nam Pavanevyo Vaishnavino Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Goda Bhakti Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Again, for those that came on lead, I saw people coming in. Thank you for coming. Please give me your blessings. Please forgive my mistakes. I want to read that Part of me doesn't want to read it, but I feel like I must read that verse again. With the blood of the bodies of these sons, Lord Parashuram created a ghastly river, which brought great fear to the kings who had no respect for Brahminical culture. Because the Kshatriyas, the men of power and government, were performing sinful activities, Lord Parashuram, on the plea of retaliating for the murder of his father, rid all the Kshatriyas from the face of the earth 21 times. Indeed, in the place known as Samantan Pankaj, hardest thing for me to say this so far today, he created 9 lakes filled with their blood. Oh, wow. When I saw this series of verses, I chuckled a bit to myself because I thought, what a perfect verse for October. October, which is the month of Halloween. And even as long as like 3 weeks ago, I would walk into the Home Depot and I was greeted with the sight of disembodied body parts. You know, they're selling them for people to put in their lawns. There's an arm, there's a leg, there's a head for people to plant on the arms. And I got off the subway not too long ago, and the first thing I see is a big poster of a movie, Halloween, and somebody's like standing there. So with this series of verses with heads and ghastly rivers, I thought it's so perfect for a horror movie. And so to introduce what I'd like to shine a light on today, I'm going to propose a sort of another synopsis for a horror movie. And I think most of you on this call will get the analogy that I'm trying to shine a light on. So this movie will begin the way many movies do, especially ones that something bad is going to happen. It begins on a beautiful, bright day. Let's say it's fall because it's fall now. And first we see the wide shots, and then we go in and we see a body. You can make it a man or a woman, whichever you choose. Walking, and it's a very well-composed body, nice head, nice neck, arms walking, and the head is turning to look both ways before you cross, and it's hearing, and it's seeing, and it's smelling, and the arms are pumping and swinging, and maybe, taking something to drink up to the mouth, and the heart is pumping beautifully, and the digestive organs are taking what's ever coming in and sending those things all over the body, and the legs are walking, and the body is just so beautiful. And I'm an asana teacher, so I see the beauty of the body moving so beautifully all the time. And then all of a sudden, as these things happen in horror movies, is a wind comes. All of a sudden, like a wind comes, and a witch appears. And that witch somehow is magically able to speak to only the arms, and says, "You know what, arms? You're better than all the other parts of the body. Yeah. The head, what would it be without you, right? The head needs you to comb its hair, to brush its teeth. We know that the digestive organs chew up the food, but where would the food be without you taking it and putting it into the mouth? And legs, come on, it carries us around, but if something really bad happens, you can't run fast enough. It's you, arms. It's you that have to take up something and fight. You know what, arms? You don't need the rest of the body. You're better." And at first, the arms doesn't believe. Sort of like Kakei in the Ramayana doesn't want to believe, right? Her maidservant poisoning her mind. But after the while, the arms say, you are right. I don't need the rest of the body. And it takes up axes and saws, and it says, what should I cut off first? And it says, I will cut off the head. There's that brain that's always trying to tell me what to do, and off whops the head. And then it begins to attack the rest of the body. And so all of a sudden, all it is just these arms. And it's crawling around it because it has no head, it cannot see. It has no mind, it cannot think. It's crawling and it's whopping out at other bodies, turning them into these ghastly creatures that are just arms. And as this movie ends, it pulls back, and we see from all these perfectly composed bodies walking down the road, all now we see are arms crawling. And then the credits roll. And I think most of us know the analogy, of course, that I'm making, that the perfectly composed body that we saw at the beginning is the Varnashram system, a system where every part of the body was working together. And of course, the body means our society working together, each with a function, so beautifully composed that the head were the Brahmanas, the head, the top, right, of this society were the holy people. The arms did have a place, but those were the Kshatriyas, the warriors, the kings, the administrators. The waist, the abdomen were the Vaishyas, the business people, the merchants, and the legs were the Sudras, the laborers getting things done. They all work so beautifully together, like a body working together. But then one part of the body got it in its mind that it didn't need the rest of it. And so who composed this beautiful, beautiful system? Well, guess who? The same one that is the taste of water and is the biggest of the biggest and the smallest of the small, who's an intelligence in all and the power and skill in all, Lord Krishna. And that perfectly designed system is the Varnashram system. And so today what I'd like to do is to look, and as I've often heard Adi say, let's hear what Krishna says. From the Bhagavad-Gita in the 18th chapter, he very beautifully tells us what this system is. He tells us what this system is, and so we'll look at it. And the second part of my presentation will be the horror show. What happens? What happens when we cut off the head and we don't listen? So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we could look at the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. And hitting all the buttons. Hope I didn't scare anybody with that horror story so early in the morning. And so I'm going to read it slowly because I'd like everybody to really listen to these qualities that are in each of these, keeping with the analogies, these body parts. Yeah. Text 41, Krishna speaks. Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras are distinguished by the qualities born of their own natures in accordance with the material modes, O chastiser of the enemy. Text 42. Here he's talking about the head, the rulers, who should be the head of the machine, rather. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. These are the natural qualities by which the Brahmanas work. That's the head. What a great, we know that with something systemic in a system, in a company or in a country, it doesn't come from the person at the bottom, it comes from the top. But then it goes on, text 43, heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, generosity, and leadership are the natural qualities born for the Kshatriyas. And those are needed too. Text 44, farming, cow protection and business are the natural work for the Vaishyas, and for the Sudras, there are labor and service to others. When I think about that list right there, I think of it like a beautiful list of ingredients, right? And if you notice, all the ingredients are top notch, right? It's as if you're baking the cake. You wouldn't get just like the best flour and then get the crappy sugar. They're all wonderful, wonderful ingredients to this society in this list. And then in text 45, Krishna says, by following his qualities of work, every man can become, I love this line, not so-so, not kind of good, but perfect. Every man can become perfect. Now, please hear from me how this can be done. I love how he says this. It's as if a little kid's standing there with all the ingredients of the cake. And then Krishna says, no, please, come. Let me show you. Let me show you how this can be done. And then for text 46, Krishna says, how can it be done? Boom, by worship of the Lord. How can we become perfect? By worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all pervading. A man can attain perfection through performing his own work. It's interesting here that Krishna uses perfect or perfection And he'll use it again in these two verses back to back. And right, isn't it in everyday world, we think this thing of perfection, you see people trying to like lift their faces and tone their bodies and trying to think quote unquote perfect. But those things aren't perfect. That is not perfection. The Shastra tells us what is perfection, what is the Atma supersidity, the perfection of the soul. And that is to have relationship with the divine, to have relationship with Krishna, to have a loving relationship. When we realize that in that relationship, who are we? We are the lovers. And as His Holiness Danyadhara Swami always says, to love is to please, and to please is to serve. And so this Atman supersidity, this perfection comes through our service to the divine. And what Krishna has just said, through our own work, right? That's remembering back to the beginning of the Bhagavad-Gita, Arjuna's like, I don't want to do my job. But isn't it wonderful? Through this system, through this beautifully laid out system, through our work, we can become perfect if we make it an offering, right? And so there's been some talk about hermeneutics in these classes lately, which I love. Andre's laughing because Danyadhara Swami has often talked about it, as has Professor Edward Bryant, who I've had the great honor of being in many of his classes about the Yoga Sutras. And one of the things that they have taught me, have shared, is that there are a lot of lists in yoga philosophy, isn't it? There's lists and lists and lists and lists and lists and lists and lists. And what they call, and many of you probably know, the first item on the list, and this makes complete sense, is like often called the elephant's footprint. Meaning the elephant's footprint is so large, it covers up all the other little footprints. So it said if that first thing is done so completely, it takes care of everything else on the list. And it makes sense. Like if we make a to-do list on our day off, what do we put on the top, right? We put the thing that's got to get done. And I'll get to that top of the list in a second. But first, I want to take to the bottom of that list of characteristics. Because oftentimes in a list in yoga philosophy, right, the end of the list is a culmination, of all those other things. And so going back to this lovely list of what I'll call ingredients, when we look at what the ingredient of the Shudras are, they're labor, and here it is, service to others. Isn't it interesting that service to others is at the end of the list? This culmination of the list is the service to others, right? If what we know perfection is loving and serving God, then as His Holiness Radhanath Swami often says, you can't love the parent if you don't love the child. Looking at the board, I know 3-4 parents that I know of on here. And let's say I'm going to take my dear friend Bhakti Devi. I love Bhakti Devi, but I don't show my love for her if I walk up to her child and smack him in the face, right? To love the child is to love the parent. And who is the children of the divine? Who are the children of Krishna? It is us. And so through we be of service to the divine, to Krishna, by being service to each other. I love that. In the journey within, Radhanath Swami's definition of bhakti really includes that. He says, the word bhakti means unconditional love for the Supreme Being and deep compassion for others. This love is so complete that it inspires love not only for God, but for everyone and everything connected to Him. In other words, bhakti is expressed in a dynamic, practical way by our loving God, showing kindness to others, and caring for the environment, knowing that it is God's sacred energy essential to the well-being of all life. Haribol Maharaj. Yeah. So we see all these ingredients were given to make that beautiful cake, to keep with that analogy, and offer it to the divine. And then I'm going to go back to the 18th chapter one more time to 1847, that most famous verse, when Krishna says, "It is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. There's perfect again. Duties prescribed according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. And I'd like to take us to the first paragraph of that purport. One's occupational duty is prescribed in Bhagavad-Gita, as already discussed in previous verses. The duties of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra are prescribed according to their particular modes of nature. One should not imitate another's duty. A man who is by nature attracted to the kind of work done by Shudras should not artificially claim to be a Brahmana, although he may have been born into a Brahmana family. In this way, one should work according to his own nature. No work is abominable if performed in the service of the Supreme Lord. The occupational duty of a Brahmana is certainly in the mode of goodness. But if a person is not by nature in the mode of goodness, he should not imitate the occupational duty of a Brahmana. For a Kshatriya or administrator, there are so many abominable things. A Kshatriya has to be violent to kill his enemies. And sometimes a Kshatriya has to tell lies for the sake of diplomacy. Such violence and duplicity accompany political affairs, but a Kshatriya is not supposed to give up his occupational duty and try to perform the duties of a Brahmana. Right? We say now in modern day culture, people say, do you, right? Don't try to be a round peg in a square hole. Krishna has given us the assurance that there are the round pegs and the round holes that fit together. And whenever I think of this verse, I think of a story told to me by Kaustubha. And perhaps some of you have heard it. Kaustubha said long ago when he was a brahmachari and he was walking all by himself one day. Maybe it was Vrindavan, I forget, but he was walking and he was all by himself. And a man came out of his house and said, "Are you American?" And Kaustubha said, "Yes." And the man said, "I have something from America that maybe you can help tell me how it works." And Kaustubha's like, okay. So he goes in and the man reaches underneath his little bed and he pulls out a waffle iron. And the man says, it's supposed to make heat. Tell me how I can use it to make heat. And Kaustubha laughs because he said he had a heck of a time explaining what a waffle was. And then a waffle iron, well, it does give off some heat, that it's not its purpose, right? It is not its purpose. It's supposed to make waffles. And I love that in this verse, Krishna has given us the ingredients, right? It is not, we may be waffle irons, we may be space heaters, but just like every part of the body, we have a role to play. And we can become, again, to use Krishna's words, we can become perfect, because what Atma Suprasidhiti is to connect with our true nature. And we can connect by using the beautiful ingredients that Krishna has given each and every one of us to serve him. And as Radhanath Swami so beautifully says, again, how do we love the parents? We love the child by not forgetting the compassion and kindness to all of us. So those are the ingredients that he's put in, right? And so I'd like to, that was sort of part one. Now I'd like to go back to what happens if we don't take Krishna's advice, which is a really, really bad idea. Jai Jagannath has said about, I've heard him say about this 1847 of the Gita, about not doing one prescribed duty. He said, and he made it so clear to me, he said, when we try to do another's perfectly instead of doing our own, he said it's setting a really bad precedent. He said that it's saying, you know what, Divine, you know what, Krishna, you made everything, but but you know what, I know better, I got this. And that's a really bad precedent to set, a really bad precedent to set. So when we look at the head of that list, it begins with the Brahminical qualities, right? And so I made a little list here of people and things that I think exemplify these Brahminical qualities, a little meditation for us. And then I will follow it with a list of the qualities from the Kshatriya, the arms, that when we read them were very beautiful, but divorced from the head, can turn really monstrous. I think of chapter 16 of the Gita when it talks about the demoniac qualities. It says that the demoniac doesn't know what to do, right? They don't know what to do because they're not following Shastra. They don't know what to do. They're, it's a horror movie. They're walking around without the intelligence that we have so readily available to us. So the first quality on the list of the Brahmanas was peacefulness. It was peacefulness. What a beautiful thing to be the very first thing on the list. Again, let's say what Krishna says. Krishna says, how can there be happiness without peace? And we know this, right? No can do. As a person, as a country, as a society. Whenever I think of peacefulness, I think of the wonderful scene of Lord Chaitanya walking through the Jandadaka forest, a forest that is full of these tigers. Oh, Andrea, were you there when I told the story for the kids that time? Yes. It was full of like animals that are attacking each other. And in comes Lord Chaitanya saying, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and enmity ceases. There's a Yoga Sutra that says that. Around one who is fully steeped in peacefulness, all enmity ceases. What a beautiful quality to have at the top, looking for this peacefulness. Yeah. I love that Gauravani often says that the Maha Mantra for him sometimes represents the prayer of St. Francis, right? Lord, let me be an instrument of thy peace. The second on the list is self-control. Self-control. Most of you have been on these calls, and a couple of weeks ago, weren't we looking at an extreme lack of self-control in the past time? But I do love how do you say the present time of things, the present time of Parava, running down the street naked, chasing after sheep, and then being rejected multiple times for Durvasi, right? Because he had no self-control. He had no self-control whatsoever. Counter that with Haridas Thakur. Haridas, they sent a prostitute, a beautiful prostitute, to him when he was young to try to lure him away. But Haridas, as we know, is a man of great determination and had great self-control. Austerity. Austerity. I think of Rananath Swami's book, The Journey Home, and that pastime of Ganesham, the little man, those of you that read it, remember, who lives in the hallway and worships these deities that are in a little closet. And he has one or two rotis. And he won't even keep them for himself. He tries even giving them to Rananath Swami. And he only has a tiny little blanket that he gives away. Such austerity, such goodness. Purity. Again, I want to look at lists in the yamas and the niyamas, right? The niyamas are about our personal practices, how we should conduct ourselves. And the first thing on that list, going a little hermeneutics now again, the elephant's footprint of that list is satya or socha. Purity. Purity is as if I take my glasses off and off a lot, because I only need them for seeing the screen. And when I put them up here, there goes the jojoba oil over my glasses. And now I cannot see. Our lens is so muddy. And I always love this comment that people have shared with me that once long ago, our Srila Prabhupada was asked, are you brainwashing people? And apparently he said, yes, because our minds are very dirty. Isn't it? Wouldn't it be nice to be led by people who had good, clear thinking, clear consciousness? Tolerance. Kunti Devi. Could there have been someone more tolerance? Having to leave her family, a child out of wedlock, giving that child away, a husband that was cursed, then a husband that died early, having to take her children into her brother-in-law's home where they were completely disrespected If there's anything, again, the parents I know in this call could say, if there's anything worse than something happened to you, something happened to your children, it's like that, don't be talking about my mama moment. Do it to me, don't be talking about my mom, don't be talking about my children. And yet, at the end of it, what does she say? We know, oh, let these calamities come again and again. Because when they do, I remember you. Right? Queen Kunti for the head of an organization, yeah. Honesty, Vidura. Think how many times Vidura must have told Dhritarashtra, what are you doing? What are you doing? You cannot enable your son. And then at the end of his life, when Vidura has been banished and then comes back, he says, brother, right, brother, you're a shell of yourself. Come with me back to the forest. Right? Just like Bibi-san in the Ramayana, that had the courage to be honest with your brother who's gone the wrong way. We should all wish that we have people in our lives that are that honest with us, that see us when we're supposed to be making a right turn, making a left, that they are that honest. That's who I want in charge, right? Knowledge. Knowledge, I go to the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, those wonderful verses 8 through 12. I'm limited on time, so I won't read them all, but I'll just begin. Like, this is knowledge. Humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, and on it goes. And then in the end, Krishna says, all these I declare to be knowledge. And besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. These are the qualities we need to be teaching in school to our children. Right? These are the qualities that Professor Edward Bryant, again, and I'm pairing knowledge and wisdom on this list together. Professor Edward Bryant once told me that, knowledge is like book learning and stuff, but wisdom is something that bathes your soul. It bathes your soul. And finally, the list ends with religiousness. Right. And so again, we look at the list. It begins with peacefulness, and where it is, what is the culmination? Religiousness. And I remember I loved when I learned that the root word for religion, the root word for yoga, yug, is both to bind back. The purpose of religion is to bind us back, again, to reestablish that relationship where we're the lover, we're the giver, back to the supreme. And of course, what better example for a head of an organization or a head of a machine could I possibly use other than Srila Prabhupada? He embodies all of those and so much more. That is our character. That is, I call him grandfather. I never knew any of my grandfathers. So I call him grandfather, right? The patriarch of our family, the head of our organization. That's what we want. And so quickly, if those qualities are taken away, let's look at the qualities that on their own were quite beautiful of the Kshatriya. But if we take away the head, if we take away the Brahmana, what happens? It becomes a horror show. So heroism can become egoism. A hero is one who sacrifices for the good of others. Without that training, right? It become, oh, look at me, look at what I'm doing. Power, like King Amarija, power, right? But he wielded it responsibly. But what's the quote? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Without the Brahminical qualities, power can become corruption. Determination is the next on the list. Without that head of the machine, determination can become bullheadedness. Don't you wish, I wish, just once a politician would say, I'm wrong. They never do. They double down. They go around in circles and think they're going to confuse you, but they dig in, they become bullheaded. They never once say they're wrong. Resourcefulness. It is good for a leader to have resourcefulness, but without that Brahminical quality, resourcefulness can become trickery. I've worked for a bunch of magicians in my life. And so it really is not good when you know the tricks. It spoils the whole thing. But it is all they are. We call it magic, but they're tricking you. Let me move it around. Let me do misdirection. Look over here because I'm over here. Without the Brahminical culture, resourcefulness becomes just trickery. Courage in battle. Yeah, that's needed. But without the Brahminical culture, it becomes cruelty. And we see that, don't we? In Ashwatthama, at the end of the war, killing those 5 young boys at night. You didn't do that in that war, in that system. Determined it became cruelty, generosity. Yeah, that's the only reason the kings had things, so that they could share this, so they could provide. But without the Brahminical teachings, generosity becomes greed. It's all for me. I think of Gollum from the Lord of the Rings, my precious. Or even worse, generosity to only people who are going to do something for me. Yeah, I'll give you something. What is the old thing? You scratch my back, I scratch yours. And then the last on the list is leadership. The Sattras need to lead. That's their thing. But without the Brahminical culture, leadership become despotism, dictatorship, right? My way or the highway. And so we can see that, in conclusion, Krishna made this beautiful system, just like the body. And again, as an asana teacher, I see it all the time. I mean, the body, I know I'm not the body. I know I'm not the body. But this thing that my soul is riding around in for this incarnation, right, is pretty boss. The way it's constructed is pretty boss and pretty awesome. But as is to say, if something gets cut off, it's ghastly. And so we can see that all the parts of the body are needed, are beautiful, have beautiful qualities. But if they are disconnected from the head, from the Brahminical culture, then it does indeed become a horror show. And so let us remember, and I think, and I always, when I read these things, I try to see where is my culpability, because all of us are the head of some machine. All of us are the influencers of something, whether at work or our family or relationship. And so we all have the responsibility to look at that list and say, am I embodying that list? Or am I cut off from the head of the machine? Let me not be like the sons of Kartavira Arjuna. Let me be more plugged in. So I thank you all for your tolerance and your kindness. There's 2 minutes left. So if anybody, thank you, Yana. If anybody has any comments and any questions that aren't too hard, that they think I might be able to answer. Gail and I already had a discussion about this. But please.
Hare Krishna, Jamuna Jaya. I want to get in before I have to go. I am so over the moon happy to have been here to witness your first Srimad Bhagavatam class for us. Thank you so much for having the bravery and the generosity to do this. It was absolutely amazing. It really did feel like that day that I got to see you tell the story of Lord Chaitanya in the forest with the animals to the children, and how I got to feel like a child. It felt like, I mean, albeit I was a little bit scared with the horror movie analogy, because I'm very visual, so I was seeing it all, and I was like, oh my God. But it felt, I was really immersed, and I got what you were sharing, and it's in there. And I do have that takeaway of understanding for myself, what are the qualities that I am embodying with Krishna at heart, and what are the qualities that I am embodying and I don't have Krishna there, and just to be careful with that. So that's my big takeaway from your class. Thank you so much again. I love you very much.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you so much for always being such a wonderful presence. Yeah, sorry for anybody, the horror movie. We got in there.
Hare Krishna, Jamuna.
Hi, Gail.
I'm going to squeeze this in real fast, too, because I know we're on the same schedule here.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Well, for one thing, you absolutely did this class like you do it every day. So it was amazing. I did have one really quick thing. I didn't catch the connection between a person being resourceful and it being trickery, like, trickery when you try and be resourceful without the head.
Yeah, I was trying to get at that, like the Kshatriyas, one of their qualities is resourcefulness. So when you're resourceful, it's like you make do. You make do with what's there without, and sometimes you may need to, I don't know, like we'll go to like baking. We'll go to baking. Oh, you go to baking. I might like, okay, I'm gonna put, I don't have this ingredient, so I'm gonna try to do with this ingredient. Right. But I'm still trying to make the best proper cake, but without some sort of like moral compass. I'm going to go, you know what? I'm just going to leave out that ingredient because it doesn't matter anyway. No one will ever know. I'll just say it's in there and I won't really use it at all. So it's the difference. I was trying to get the difference of trying to stretch something, maybe trying to figure out a way and trying to like, it's in there, but it's not really there. It's like, don't look, it's not really there. I'm just going to like say it is and not do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I also want to say that, I was trying to follow your instruction and really think about each of those qualities, meaningfully, And so I really love the fact that you gave exemplars for each of them. So I have to look at the video again to really take it in. But yeah, I really appreciated that you did, break those qualities down individually. Thank you so much for a really animated. Of course, your class would not be anything other than animated. But yeah, great class. Thank you so much, Jamuna. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Thank you, Gail, for your support as always. And thank you for not asking me about the Bhagavad-Gita.
About Achintya Beta.
Thank you for not asking that. Thank you. Thank you. You showed up thank you for your kindness. Oh, and Radhika. Oh, she's watching that's right. I forget there are other people out there.
Yeah, YouTube always has folks, wonderful class. And Radhika actually came up. She's not camera ready, so she wanted to say something.
Wait, I can't quite hear her.
You're so pleasing to the heart. And during your lecture, I could not stop smiling. Inside my heart, I was so happy to hear from you. Thank you so much. I'm absolutely in love with you.
Well, thank you, Radhika. Thank you, as always, for your love and support. Thank you. So, thanks, everybody, for coming up. Hey, Bhakti Devi.
Hi, Jamuna Jaya. Haribol. I just want to say, you did you, and you did it well. It was extremely entertaining, I will say. I love the horror story. Well, it kind of really is a horror story right now.
Yeah.
So
That was
absolutely, yeah, it's absolutely correct.
That was my point.
I want to ask you, how can one best make their job, what they do, an offering to Krishna?
And I welcome other people. I think of you, Yashoda, so much because I think you have a big job that I don't understand. I know you do things, not that I understand Bhakti Devi's job either, but Yashoda does such a beautiful job. I remember you said that, Yashoda, is it still true? You have chanting on in your office all the time. Is that still true? I remember you saying that you have Prabhupada chanting in the background, yeah?
Yeah. But I think you do a great job of representing Krishna and Prabhupada in whatever you do. I think so. You're perfectly suited to answer this question.
I think that there's a number of different ways. There's the consciousness in which you approach the day. it's like, these are all the people around me and all the people that, because we're all serving some way or the other. All these people I'm serving. And back to Ramnath Swami's beautiful definition of bhakti, which I love, is like compassion for others. These are everyone is Krishna's child. So let me serve them, whether it be a kind word or a comment, let me serve them. The other thing is, to understand, like, the things that you do well. I think about this all the time, the things that you do well, to understand that they are gifts from Krishna. He is giving you the capacity, like the list of those qualities. He's giving you capacity, and he's not giving you the capacity to sit to sit and not do them. So to be grateful is like, wow, I've got a mind. Devi, you clearly have to do something with numbers, something I could never do. At some point to go, Krishna, you've given me the capacity to deal with numbers. Thank you. Thank you for this gift. Thank you. And making it an offering back, and like in your gratitude of it. And then of course, the other thing is, for those that, make money, there is the thing about using some of that money to give to the temple, to Adi's not here, but certainly to support Adi's prasad distribution, any of those things that really would help devotees out. Because the greatest welfare work, as Srila Prabhupada always tells us, the greatest welfare work is to reconnect people. So, and sometimes that takes some Lakshmi, right? And so in any way, giving that what you can to help that. So it's all about your consciousness, about being grateful for the gifts and the qualities you have. It's about how we treat, so much is about how we treat other people, because Kastuba, again, he uses the story of when Gita Priya, his lovely wife, was teaching in a Montessori school, and she never talked about her faith, but they all noticed how different Gita Priya was. And if we know Gita Priya, she's like this shining beacon, right? And they little by little began to turn to her, and she influenced that culture by her peacefulness and her very Brahminical qualities. Yeah, so I think our consciousness, as we walk through the world, we really can be the stone that drops and makes the ripples all around us, and really can influence the culture and the people around us. Does that help?
Thank you, Jamuna Jaya. Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Haribol. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you guys so much. Ananda Bihari, thank you for the opportunity. Again, devotees, thank you so much for your time, your tolerance. I hope the horror story didn't offend anybody. I thought it was an eye catcher to begin with, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamuna Jaya. Wonderful, interactive, lively, graphic class. Thank you very much.
Thank
you everyone for coming on. See you all tomorrow. Tomorrow is another day in Krishna consciousness. All right. Haribol.
Thank you.
Haribol.
Thank you, Jamuna Jaya. Haribol.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.